Alright then, hello everyone, welcome back to OBF1 Tier 1 for round 6 of the league around Spa for the Belgium Grand Prix. Last time out we saw a good battle at Bahrain with the win ended up being taken by H. Taylor. Oh no, H. Taylor the pit again. It's rough in the back of my mind, but I'm pretty sure XD might have actually won that again, but I know definitely got a good result last time out. We're here at Spa now. If it's anything like the real life Grand Prix, should be a pretty entertaining race. But we'll have to see how it goes. We saw earlier in Tier 2 a bit of a change of weather. It started on the dry tyres, but then with the safety car, the weather started to shift to wet, and it really threw a spanner in the mix, or a spanner in the works, and caused a lot of carnage for a lot of those drivers who didn't really practice so much in the wet or whatnot. But you do tend to see a fair few wet races around Spa. But we're down onto track now, and we'll be waiting for the first driver to go out for his lap in qualifying. Every driver will just be picking this up on picking what tires they want to do, lowering fuel, all that kind of stuff, and they'll be heading right out on to track. It's been a interesting season so far, but the top three has remained the same throughout most of the season. It's been really since Portugal round 2. It's been XD, H. Taylor, and Short Marcus all in the battle. XD though starting to pull the gap on H. Taylor and Short Marcus, but H has just had a lot of bad luck in these rounds, and I'm sure he'll be looking to turn some of that bad luck into some good luck. But we got our first car out on track is in fact Paul Harrison in the Williams car on a set of medium tyres, so he'll just be doing a banker on a set of mediums, getting a feel for the track, making sure everything's alright, and then he'll go into a soft set of tyres and try to really put himself in a good position. We got a few people who are coming up from Tier 2 as well to race. You got El Shakar, Tier 2 winner, coming up into this race like he did last week, starting P15, currently P15 at the moment. And then you got the next one, who is Truck Fireman, P2. He's been put into the Williams car, I believe, and he's coming up from Tier 2 after finishing P7, so it'll be interesting to see where those drivers can vote out throughout the field. Last time out, we showed El Shakar could kind of put himself in the mix, but then after an issue, he kind of just dropped back, and it's not Truck's first Tier 1 race either. He replaced someone at Portugal, and that was his first drive. But we'll go on board with Paul Harrison as we go on for his first lap in qualifying. Here as he activates DRS, comes down front straight, braking just at the 100 meter board, shift down to around that second gear. If you can get down to first, go down to first, then straight back on the power as you straighten it up. Don't waste any time getting on the power around there. Try to avoid wheel spin though, easily flat out through a Rouge. There's no problems through here. Runs a bit wide, but it's not going to cost you as much time when it goes flat out. Activates DRS again. He's going to pass the first sector now to do a 30.4 as he breaks his 50 meter board, clips the curve, brings it back. Don't drive too much because the car's going to slide as it did. Has to do a slight lift off to correct it, to make sure that he didn't end up spinning on his lap, breaking just outside of the curve there, running a little bit wide at apex, but then bring it back for a good exit. Braking just before the corner here. I usually just kind of guess it. Don't really have an exact point there, but then flying through here, you can't touch the inside there because it's going to spit you right out. That's the problem I always have around this track. Braking at the side of the curve, bringing the car in, using all of that curve, bringing it back. All of this curve, these ones aren't so deadly compared to the ones at the side of the sector. Braking again at the side of the curve, bringing it back on the power, flat out through here to 116 through the second sector on a set of medium tyres. He was going to come through the last sector now, flat out the roller here, no problems here. Still flat out, no downforce in his car allows you to do that, braking just after the 100-meter board. Get the car tucked in, get it down to second, bring it back in again, and then focus all on the exit as you bring it up to the line. And the first lap comes in, and it's a 1:45.2 from Paul Harrison in the Williams. Mr. C. Rees validated his first flying lap as Town comes into pits. He must not have had a good lap there. He's going to abandon his. Jesse starts his flying lap on a set of soft tyres as George puts in a 44.5 to put in the new best medium lap, 7/10 ahead of the Williams of Paul Harrison. But Jesse's been quick all throughout the entire year, but he just hasn't had so much luck in the race, just like H. Taylor. But yeah, he's usually been quick in qualifying, so I do expect him to be somewhere up within that top 5 if he's got the pace around this track. Short Marcus puts in the time, but does a 45.1 on the mediums, puts himself P3 instead of Paul Harrison. Then Anthony's by clips him with a 44.9, 2/10 ahead of him. So George's time's still looking good. He was looking good last time out, but then he converted to the 2-stop, and it just looked to ruin his race in the end, as the 2-stop was not the strategy to go around Bahrain. But CDM puts in a new fastest medium time of a 44.4 on a set of mediums as the first soft tire time comes through from Cairo Racing of a 44 flat, only 4/10 ahead of the quickest medium time. So these are I did expect to see quicker times than this, but I could just be wrong with the times. I'm not sure. I didn't get a chance to do much practice for this or much lap time around this track, but it's still flat out to the end of the lap for Jesse. He's going to he's going to be the next person to set a soft tire lap, I believe, but through the final corner he'll come up to the line and he's going to set himself a 1:42.8. There's the kind of lap times I was expecting on a set of softs. Now that is a time to contend with in qualifying. So he's stepping in the Ferrari seat this time. Last time he was in Alpha, so he's been promoted. Actually, never mind, last time he was in the Williams, so he's been switched to Ferrari this time out. But in Tier 2 he races in Alfa Romeo and he comes up to Tier 1 and gets promoted to the Ferrari seat. But he's pushing like crazy. He wants to put himself in a good position against these top drivers. SpongeBob puts in a 43.4 in his Alfa Romeo, currently sitting 4th in the championship, not far behind the Aston Martin of Short Marcus P7. Short Marcus hasn't had the best of races since round 1, where he came through the field for a fantastic win in his Aston Martin XD. Does a 43.2 to put himself second place for the time being, 4/10 off of the pole time. As El Shikak Razue coming through the final sector now. He's coming through the final sector. He's got no DRS down this back straight, but it is all flat out nonetheless. He's going to break out to the 100-meter board, tuck it in, and then bring it back as Short Marcus and Antonis actually go onto a set of soft tyres. H. Taylor sets a 43.1 to put himself ahead of the championship leader. XD Elshik Cow puts himself behind a few of the medium runners, but in the mix of the medium runners with a 44.5 on a set of softs. But those championship rivals right up there, H. Taylor and XD. It's going to be the battle to watch all season long. H. Taylor still looking for a bit of luck to come his way, but Jesse's still 3/10 clear of the field in his Red Bull car. As El Shikaki validates his next lap, and that is he's done for some laps. Says Paul Harrison has been doing some laps on the medium tyres, but he's not on a flyer at the moment. Another driver who is on a flyer though is Town in his Mercedes. He can get up there. He's been through the midfield at the top at times, Town has, and he's going to be looking to get himself up there and put himself in a good position. Only Mercedes in this race, so he's going to be He's going to be the only one giving points for his team, but I'm sure he'll be able to do that just fine. His teammate usually, I believe, is I-Half, but he hasn't been able to race for a few weeks now, unfortunately. He really could have been amongst the mixed at the top there and really contested for the championship, but I'm not sure as to why, but he just hasn't been available for racing all that much. A lot of drivers in the pits now, but one who is in town on his first flying lap on a set of soft tyres. He comes through the chicane now, holding it in second gear, brings it back, will activate DRS. You can hear the amount of wheel spin as he gets on the power there. And he does a 43.1, puts himself P3, splitting the two championship rivals of H. Taylor and XD with a purple last sector. A great lap from him. The Alfa Romeo of Chris has invalidated his lap, so he will be done for the time being. Antonis on his first soft tyre lap, last lap done on mediums, currently sitting P11. He's gonna want to improve that, get himself in the mix of those soft tyre riders. Not quite sure the difference between the soft and the medium tyre. I imagine it's around about a second, but he's actually invalidated his lap somewhere, so he won't be going quick on this lap. But Short Marcus sitting third in the championship, looking to get himself up there with those other boys, his other championship rivals, first and second, H. Taylor and XD. In the championship, he's going to look to want to get himself up there with those boys in qualifying, but it just seems like a lot of his pace comes from the race, not so much from qualifying, and it comes from the consistency in the race. And of course, it is better to have better race pace than quali pace, because all the points come from the race, no points come from the qualifying sessions. But he's absolutely pushing on this lap, I'm sure, trying to get himself up in this position. Only done a 45.1 so far, but sat on a set of medium tyres from what I believe currently. So he's P12. He's going to want to at least be in the top 10 for points. The point system in this the same as it is in real life F1. 1 point for the 10th, 2 9th, 4 for 8th, 6 for 7th, 8 for 6th, 10 for 5th, 12 for 4th, 15 for 3rd, 18 for 2nd, and a whopping 25 points for 1st. But he's up by an absolute ton at the moment as he comes through the chicane to line up. You can hear again the wheel spin as they get on the power out of there. He's going to cross the line, he's going to go P3 and put himself just behind championship rival H. Taylor, who's just ahead of him, P2 in the championship, and ahead of XD, so he's actually putting himself in the mix this race. So this could be a hell of a race to watch, especially seeing the fact that he usually has race pace over quali pace. But he does invalidate his next lap, so he won't be going for a second flyer. But one to watch is XD. He's just started his flying lap in quali. He's just started his next flying lap. He will only be able to get one more in. So if he does do this, it's going to be a few consecutive laps. It's not enough time to come into the pits, go out again, and do all that, unless he comes in on this lap. There is not quite enough time to come out at the end of qualifying. But yeah. So it should be a good race. We see all top 3 in the championship, all in the top 3 in the race. We see top 3 in the championship, all in the top 5 in qualifying so far. But Jesse's still holding the top spot, 3/10 clear of the second driver. So I said it before early on while he was on his lap. He's had quality pace, but he hasn't been able to do it so much in the races. He will come into the pits and he'll wait for one last flying lap towards the end of the session. XD though, up by 2/10 on his lap, coming up into the final sector now. If he improves by this much, he will put himself just ahead of H. Taylor and Short Marcus, all 3 of them in a row in championship order. What a way that could be, what a result that could be for the race. With Jesse putting himself in the mix, and Town and all those guys trying to put themselves in the mix as he gets on the power there. Not so much wheel spin out of the final corner across the line. He puts himself P2 with a 143 flat, and just barely about half a tenth ahead of P2 in the championship, H. Taylor, who is also on a flying lap, and he puts in a 42.2, responds to XD's lap and puts in an almighty lap of a 42.2 to put himself 6/10 clear of the closest car of Jesse. So H. Taylor showing he's not a driver to mess with. He might not be leading the championship, but he definitely should be up there. He's showing that he's definitely got some pace to show for. Let's just hope the race does the same for him. XD though still out on a flying lap. I think he's doing another fly in a row, as he won't have enough time to come into the pits and go out again, so he's just gonna have to do it twice in a row as Cairo Racing improves his lap in the AlphaTauri to go P3 with a 43 flat. So he puts another car in between H. Taylor and XD, but XD invalidates his lap. He'll have one more chance at a lap if he wishes, but he spins. Oh, and it's contacted the wall and qualifying over for XD as he crashes into the wall, and it'll be P4 at best for the Ferrari driver. Unfortunate to see there, but Town, he's now on a flying lap. SpongeBob, we saw a good round from him last time, showing that he has the pace to fight at the top of the field, but it doesn't seem he doesn't seem to be on a push lap here. He's going slow. He's waiting for the last lap until he will push. It looks like Towns actually invalidated his lap too, so he won't be on a fly. George is off in the wall. He's clipped his front wing, so that's qualifying over for him. As he hits the wall again and confirms that qualifying is over for him. El Shakal also without a front wing. Absolute chaos as everyone goes out for their flying lap. Trucky Fireman, only person on a flying lap who doesn't have some sort of issue. He's at the start. He's only at the start of the track as a random wheel sitting in the middle of the track with the jelly flags to sector 1, 2, and 3. At some point, no drivers looking to go out for their final flying lap at all. There's a few on out laps here. Jesse, one of them, we'll keep an eye on him. Short Marcus, also another one. Doesn't have to improve by much to put himself towards the championship leader of XD, but it should be an interesting race with Jesse and Cairo Racing coming in the mix of the top 3 battle. As Chucky comes through up to the second sector, across the second split, he's 5/10 up in his lap. It's not enough to put himself into P13 or a higher position than where he is now in P14, but as we come towards the end of the session, we're going to see a lot of drivers start to begin their flying laps. One of which is Paul Harrison, who's just started his. Jesse will be another one to keep an eye on, but there's only a minute in the session, so if you haven't already gone out, you are not going to get a lap in this qualifying session. As Chucky Fireman activates DRS, improves by 7/10, but it's not enough to improve position. KRC he will be in the next one on a flying lap, apart from Paul Harrison, who's actually even further down on a flying lap. And then the David Town is even further down. He'll be on his last flying lap now, pushing to the absolute limit in qualifying, trying to put in a good lap, but he runs a bit wider. That's his qualifying over as he invalidates his final run in this qualifying session. But one who hasn't been invalidated, Paul Harrison in his Williams, currently sitting P12. His best lap done on a set of medium tyres. He did around about a 3 or 4 lap stint on medium tyres to start this qualifying session, and now he's going onto a set of softs, and he's going to show you what he can do on these softs. El Shakal and Chris done for qualifying as the clock comes to 0. But Paul Harrison still on his flyer, looking to put himself in a good position here. He's 5/10 up on his lap. That will put him up into P9 for the time being, but he's going to need a bit more of an improvement if he wants to look towards P8 or possibly even P7. It might be a bit of a stretch to say top 6. So look at second all the way through to 6th, very close, or even 3rd to 6th. That will split by just over a 10th, but Paul Harrison is going to come through the chicane, and he's going to cross the line. It's going to be an improvement of nearly a second, do a 43.8, and put himself just ahead of Chris and P8. He is done for qualifying. CDM currently 2/10 up on his lap, but we gotta keep an eye on Jesse as he comes through the final 3 quarters. Through the chicane he comes. He's gonna come up to the line. Can he contend for pole position across the line? Yes, he can. He gets pole position in this qualifying session, just barely, not even a 10th ahead of H. Taylor. Jesse turning up and say, although I might not be in the run for the championship at the moment, I definitely can put myself in there, as KRC puts himself P3 with a 42.9. He puts himself in the mix, but those top 2 absolutely clearing the field. Both 7 H. Taylor P2 7/10 clear of the nearest car of KRC. But what a lap from Jesse to put himself on pole position in this qualifying session. Did not see that one coming, but what a lap it was. As there is confirmation of the grid. Jesse with a beautiful lap of a 42.1 puts himself on pole position ahead of H. Taylor P2. They finish off the front row. KRC starts the second row, followed by Cairo Racing. You got CDM XD and Short Marks Town. SpongeBob Paul Harrison finishing off the top 10. Chris George El Shakal Antonis by Truck Fireman, and then Mr. C Rees, no time set at the house. He will start P16 in this race. But what a qualifying session that was indeed for Jesse to take pole position just barely ahead of H. Taylor, and I thought H. Taylor had that pole for sure with an absolute banger of a lap. As it's a wet race. There you have it. It is a wet race, guys. What did I say? There's rain in tier 2. There is rain starting off tier 1. It may go dry, but I'm sure a lot of these drivers would have known this information, and they have access to this information. I do not, but it is a wet race. It looks like roughly intermediate conditions. It doesn't look like enough to it doesn't look like enough of a cause to go on to wets for the time being, but all drivers will be putting will have their setups on, maybe be tweaking their front wings a little bit if they went for more of a dry setup, but a lot of these guys will would have done their qualifying laps on wet setups, so it might be why we saw such a big gap to the top two drivers, because maybe they did their laps on dry setup. But 5 red lights in round 6, and we are away we go for round 6 of OBF1. It's a good start from Jesse ahead of H. Taylor. He pulls across and he holds lead in the D1, but H. Taylor still on the outside. He's going to try and hold it around, and it's not going to quite work. Turn 1, but Jesse holds lead from H. Taylor from Cairo Racing, who now pulls ahead of the McLaren of KRC, but both McLaren cars using 4th and 5th. They can help each other out in this race. XD all the way down in 6th place with Short Marcus just behind him. It's going to be a battle to watch in this race, but you can see all the chaos behind these drivers. But you still have H. Taylor P2 is going to be looking to get as close to Jesse as possible. It's really going to show how much practice these guys put into the wet conditions, or whether they put all their practice into the dry. There's a yellow flag as the driver's gone, and it's Mr. C Rees. He's already gone and out of this qualifying session, and that is him done. Unfortunately, not what you would have wanted to see from him, but that is him done. The strategy looking to be intermediate to intermediate tyres. It will depend on whether the weather dries up or not. Unfortunately, I don't have Jeff to tell me that information, but it is a VSC already in this race from Mr. C Rees DNF. It'll slow down so that the marshals can clear the car off the track and they can get back underway. 5-second penalty though, handed to XD as he's got contact. XD dropping through the field. It's absolute chaos for XD. He's around XD down to P15 in this race. That is XD out of this race not out of this race, sorry, that is XD, all the way down to P15, limping with one end plate missing on his car, so he's going to have to pit, and that is absolute mayhem for the race, in terms of who will be winning this race and leading the championship after this race. Yes, XD has a good gap, but not good enough to hold off a win or a P2. If H. Taylor finishes a P2 or above, and XD does not finish within the top 10 in this race, he will take the tops. He will take back he will take the lead in the championship. But he also got Short Marcus, who's behind him. He will gain 10 points, but unfortunately Short Marcus just too far outside the gap. Even if he gained 25 points, he'd still just be behind XD, who still somehow has the fastest lap, but he's into the pits as we get back underway and racing again. H. Taylor from Jesse, we're not back underway racing, they were just going very quick down the straight. Indeed, but SpongeBob and Town going up and down position, so we might actually be back racing here. Never mind, I am wrong again. So we are back underway and racing as people are swapping positions further back now. These guys absolutely going at it behind. El Shakal in the Ferrari coming out from tier 2, trying to show he can be a tier 1 driver. It's a bit of contact with him and Anthony Spy. He loses the rear a little bit, but it's not enough to drop back in position. Paul Harrison holds up the PA for the time being, but El Shakal's going to be looking to come right back out of here. Tuck in behind in slipstream. El Shakal, more experience in the wet. He just did a full race around here in the wet. He could fly, absolutely fly through the field if he uses the experience from the wet in the last race. In this race, whether it dries up or not in this race, we'll have to see. We can't call anything too early as of yet. We'll just have to wait and see what happens in the conditions. But you can see him using his overtake, using it always to come down the straight. As we run on board, you can see that he is in fact using his overtake. No DRS, so it's going to be down to pure pace from these drivers. SpongeBob sitting in P6 in his AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri currently leading the Constructors' Championship ahead of Alpine. The highest Alpine is George, who's P15. So as it stands, they'll increase their gap even more. Out in the leaders, they already have quite a decent gap, but it seems a lot more like AlphaTauri going for the Constructors' Championship rather than the drivers. But I'm sure they'll be looking to get the likes of SpongeBob Okara Racing up there in the Drivers' Championship. SpongeBob had a good round last time out, put himself up there, but not enough to get himself quite back into the mix of the top 10. But remember, we're not even at the midway stage of this season yet, so there's still plenty of time for these drivers to come back at one another in the championship. You still have SpongeBob just behind Short Marcus, who's in P5. Short Marcus is going to be looking to get himself right back through the field in this race, as he's as he needs to get as many points as he can on XD, who's in P13, so it's like he'll get himself back into points. But if he finishes P9 and H. Taylor finishes P1, or even if he finishes P8, I think H. Taylor will still at least tie him for the lead in the championship, which will be the same going into the next round of racing. I mean, the KRC and the McLaren doing just fine. His McLaren teammate though had some sort of issue. He shot down to P12 unfortunately, but he's out there. He can do it himself, he reckons. You can see the confidence he has behind that car, showing some good pace, not struggling under pressure in these wet conditions. But remember, anything can happen. If it goes to dry and one driver gets it perfectly, the others do not. Again, it could be a massive mix-up in this race. But the closest battles we're seeing are between this midfield fight here of KRC, Short Marcus, SpongeBob and Town. As Jesse sets the new fast lap of a 156 flat in his Red Bull Honda, and then he's beat by Town in his Mercedes AMG with a 55.8, so just 2/10 quicker of his lap. Town showing he has some good pace in the way. He's going to be looking to find his way back up through the field in this race. but you still see up front the likes of H. Taylor closing in on Jesse. These guys pulling clear of the field, showing they have a lot more pace than these guys, and pulling quite a good gap to the cars behind. But Kyra isn't going to give up that easy. Kyra still has the likes of KRC, and these guys coming up to the back of him as Jesse gets a 3-second time penalty already this early on the race. That is going to be crucial for the final result in this race, to see whether or not he finishes in the position he is now. But you got H. Taylor all over the back of him here. He won't be able to make an overtake anyway at the moment, but it will all come down to how much ERS they have used and how much they will use. You can see there on their dash, H. Taylor has way more ERS than what Jesse does, so he can what's the word? He can waste the ERS if he wants to. He can feel free to waste the ERS if he wishes to, and he'll still have more than Jesse. You can see him using it down the back straight here to close up to Jesse. Jesse doing the same, using all of his, but remember, it's quite easy to save ERS in the wet as you're braking earlier, and all that ERS comes back under braking. But Jesse still manages to hold on to the lead for the time being, and H. Taylor still stays behind him, and these guys behind are all over the back of each other. SpongeBob pushing the limits as he gets on the throttle, loses the back end a little bit, but not enough for Town to come out in there. But Short Mark still sitting behind KRC. He's been patient so far. These guys sitting quite even still on ERS. Everyone using around about the same, except Kyra has managed to use quite a lot. But with the wet conditions, you can afford to use your ERS that little bit more. This is a 3-second handed to SpongeBob as well at P6, so that's not going to be what he wanted in this race. But look at Short Marcus. Here he goes all over the back of KRC. He pulls to the outside line on the wet. Can he hold him around the outside in the wet tyres? He brakes later. He holds it around the outside for the time being, but in the end, the inside line is just too much better for him to be able to do anything, and he then becomes under attack from the likes of SpongeBob behind him. SpongeBob will have a little look to the inside line, but it won't quite work through there, and he holds on to P5 for the time being. Short Marcus does, but he'll have another chance to come back at KRC in the late future. Doesn't look like there's any chance of the rain lightening up, but it doesn't look like it's going to be getting much heavier either, so still got to keep a good eye on the weather in this race and what will be happening. I wish I could see somewhere on someone's stream what the weather is going to be like, but I don't think anyone in here is actually streaming, so don't think we can unfortunately find a stream for this race unless Jesse is live, and he is live, so we can go back in his stream and look back at his for his for what the weather was like from his perspective. I can see it now, but we can't quite see. We have to skip to the start of the race. But KRC, the gap KRC and Kyra is starting to calm down more and more between those two drivers, but it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening between them. But up front, we've got to keep an eye on these guys as they just 2 tenths away from each other, weaving down the straight, trying to pull Jesse, trying to pull H. Taylor. Just so sure he has a little look to the inside, but without the RS, it's not going to be too much of a move happening. But yes, can confirm it is going to be a full wet race. No chance of the conditions drying up at all in this race. The forecast says it's going to be completely wet, so we expect it to be completely wet. So we expect 11:11 a pit stop on to another set of intermediate tyres, or maybe you might even see some drivers stay out on their inters. Of course, fresher inters don't have that much pace, don't have as much pace as fresher soft compound tyres have over a worn set. So if you can stay out and manage to hold it, it is going to benefit you a lot more. Cairo, though, he gets himself a 3-second time penalty further behind. So it's proving that the wet conditions are making it hard to stay within the white lines and stay within the track limits around here. But H. Taylor, experienced driver, he's managing to do it quite well right now. As long as if I was H. Taylor right now, they've got a good gap behind. He doesn't have to worry about finding Jesse too much. These guys are quite even on pace, but he can just sit behind, make sure he doesn't get too many pens, and he can push for the position later on if he does wish to do so. But at least if he can't get the move, he'll get it done in penalties. But he'll sit right behind the driver, and again, these guys using all their arrows, trying to get past one another. Jesse using a little bit more than what H. Taylor is, as El Shakal picks up himself a 3-second time penalty down in P10. But 5/10s back is just going to be too much of a gap for anything to happen between these two drivers, between Red Bull and the Haas. I'm sure Red Bull were happy when they saw that they were going to be getting Jesse stepping in for him in this race, but the difference between these two drivers is one is fighting the championship, one isn't. So I'm sure we'll see one be a bit more aggressive than the other. One being H. Taylor, he's currently sitting P2 in the championship, just 14 points behind championship leader XD. And with the same point system as real F1, if XD finishes P8 and H. Taylor finishes P2, these guys will go to the next round tied on points. But then you still got Short Marcus coming to the mix. But even if he wins this race, he will not find himself in the lead of the championship, but he will find himself very, very close to it indeed. It's good that XC has lost it, because that manages to bring Short Marcus that little bit more back into the mix, so he can start to fight again. He's going to be looking to want to have another good round like he did the first time out at Silverstone, but then he missed Portugal, so he couldn't. There's a few points there which he possibly lost to those top guys, but it's been some poor rounds from a few of these guys. Nonetheless, H. Taylor still all over the back of Jesse here, using slipstream, using his overtake, but he's got a lot to use. If I was H. Taylor, I'd just waste it all down the straight. You've got that much, you can get ahead if you wish. If he wants to get ahead, do that. Otherwise, sit behind, don't get penalties, and get it later in the race. But of course, for our sake, watching the stream, we want to see some goddamn moves as they both to set a new fastest lap one after another in this race. The gap coming to just about 6 seconds now to the car behind them, and he's 5/10 off of Jesse in slipstream. It doesn't look like he'll be able to do much. He's using all his overtake there. Deactivates it here though. He isn't going to try to get the move done, but he activates DRS. He activates ERS again. Jesse doing the same though, weaving all over the place, trying to get some temps into those tires if they don't already have enough temperatures. But H. Taylor has to sit behind him for the time being and won't be able to get a move done this time out. But these guys behind still very, very close to this race town on the back of SpongeBob for P6 in this race. But these guys up front still going at it and still having a very, very close battle. It'll be interesting to see what will go through drivers' minds in this race, but of course we don't really know that at the current moment. But it would be interesting to know what was going through their minds and what they were thinking in this current time. Look just how close H. Taylor is getting through the chicane. He tries a little cut back there as Jesse is wide. H. Taylor is not on the inside. The outside will go Jesse. Won't be enough in the T1. He'll have to sit behind, but it's very much going to be a guy into D2. He goes down the inside. H. Taylor does. Jesse wide gets another 3-second time penalty. So Jesse really struggling on the time penalties. Oh, and there's a squeeze into the wall. And if H. Taylor did not lift off there, it would have been absolute chaos and him in the wall. So very, very close between those two drivers there, not to end up with a DNF on H. Taylor's end. So lucky there he lifted off. Any other driver would go for it and hold it down the inside there as Short Marcus into the pits. in for an early pit stop. He comes out though, and in P10 he'll try to undercut those drivers in clean air, but he needs to get out ahead of Chris. These guys will go side by side through here. Oh, and they just barely miss contact through there. Oh, and Schumacher's lost it. Oh, and there goes his front wing, and a 3-second time penalty on top of that as he resets to track, and he's now got to do an entire lap in the wet without a front wing. That's a driver's worst nightmare, that is for sure. But now he's stuck like this for an entire lap of this race, and just like that, the advantage he had to XD gone in this race. But the advantage isn't gone, it's the advantage from XD to H Taylor, and now H Taylor to short Marcus, so he can increase that gap even more. You can see just how much H Taylor is pressuring Jesse. He managed to pressure him enough to go wide last time out, and look how far on the back of him he is here. These guys very, very close to this race. Not much visibility, they don't have as much visibility as we do, but of course in real life Formula 1 the visibility is even less for these drivers. But you can see just how close he will get through the chicane. Try to cut it tighter, but it won't quite work that time out. It will sit behind 4/10 the gap. He's going to want it to be around about that if he wants to try to make a move. He's going to need that around that gap after he comes out of the first corner. He comes out or loses the rear end a bit, but it drops down to a 5/10 gap. But never say never in Formula 1. As he comes down through a Rouge up the straight, he'll come down the straight now in slipstream, weaving all over the place. Is Jesse trying to figure out inside, outside, which line am I going to go? He gains in slip and ERS, but still isn't enough. He needs DRS or some sort of drag reduction system, whether it's DRS or something that just gives him more power than Jesse. But both these guys running around about the same overtake. There's nothing he can do to have an advantage but on pure pace. Sure, Marcus finds his way back around, back into the pit stops, back into the pits in this race. But it'll be interesting to see where he starts to filter out. George gives himself a 3-second time penalty, but of course not getting time penalties could help you massively in this race. With the wet conditions, it looks like a lot of these drivers struggling to stay within track limits, one of which is Jesse, but H Taylor showing just how well he's going down. Gets a 3-second as I'm talking about how difficult it is to stay within the track limits. But H Taylor just taking it easy behind Jesse, limiting his amount of warnings he's getting, whereas Jesse is pushing to the absolute limit to stay ahead. He's currently got 6 seconds. He's currently got 6 seconds of warnings. And he's not going to want to increase it by any more than that, because that's already enough. But H Taylor in, he's going to be trying to undercut Jesse in this race, but if he comes out in traffic, it's going to be annoying for the Haas driver. He slows it down in time for the pit entry. He'll pull it into the Haas boxes right at the end of the pit lane. You can see his pit crew ready there. He'll pull it in to the box. He doesn't have to worry about those other drivers pitting, because his pit lane is right at the end. Comes in, puts the tyres on, out he goes, still holds on, he still doesn't get held up. Good pit stop from the Ash crew coming out of the final corner. He manages to come out ahead of any traffic and in P5. So both him and Jesse are going to be doing their best laps to try and come out ahead of each other. He's going to be using always ERS, everything he can to push towards the drivers. There's a yellow flag as George makes a mistake. As you can see on the mini-map, Polaris are currently sitting P4, the two Alpha Tauris right next to each other, P2 and P3 on track. Of course, this is a net position as these guys are still yet to pit in this race, both of them with 3-second time penalties, struggling in the wet conditions to keep it on track as Oshikawa comes to the pits. He makes his pit stop in this race, so that's for damage or not, I'm not sure, as George retires from the session. He is done in this race. He is out. Only 13 drivers remaining in this wet race. We saw a lot of DNFs in the last one, but these drivers are a lot more skillful. They know how to keep it on track. They know what they're doing, and of course they're showing that here. Two Alpha Tauri drivers showing some good pace, showing why Alpha Tauri are leading the Constructors' Championship. But this is the lap to pit. This is the Predicted pit lap 11:11 is the normal strategy, but one of these drivers is going to have to stay out. They can't double stack, and it's really not worth double stacking in these conditions, as Jesse will come into the pits. He will be a driver to watch. He gets a 5-second on top of his time though for speeding in the pit lane. He'll come in, no penalty will be served. He'll just chuck on new tires and get out, but those 11 seconds could hurt him massively in this race. So now we just want to keep an eye on the gap to him and H Taylor. As H Taylor comes down the straight, you can see Jesse in the pit lane there as he comes through. These drivers both right at it as El Shakal retires from the session, and Jesse still comes out just barely ahead of H Taylor, but he's got to come out just behind him. He's gonna have, will he have enough to do anything here? But there's some issue by those things with, as there's a safety car. That's the issue. They would have been a move, but El Shakal has ended his race, and the safety car has been called as these guys have come into the pits, and SpongeBob decided to stay out, and look at the position he is in now. This is not the position that this is not where Jesse would have wanted to be. As we look at penalties, look at that. With safety car coming in, he's got 11 seconds of penalties. When SpongeBob pits, it's roughly imagine an 11, 12, or at max like a 14, 15 second pit stop difference under VSC or SC. You can see just how low he's going on Delta, but still manages to run wide, showing just how terrible these conditions are. But he should manage to jump his teammate, who's sitting P4 at the moment anyway. So these AlphaTauri drivers looking very, very good indeed in this race. You see, Chucky tried the full wet tires, tried a different strategy, but it didn't work out for him. There was no cause to go full wets in this race, as it wasn't getting any wetter. The track was just staying at constant intermediate conditions. But I imagine we'll see SpongeBob into the pits, getting rid of those intermediate tires and chucking on a new fresh set of inters for what will be, I imagine, around about 8 or so laps left of racing before they go green flags again, and he might just be able to contest for a high position in this race. He only has 3 seconds worth of penalties, I'm pretty sure, from what I remember. H Taylor though, he's making another pit stop, so interesting to see here. I don't know what his strategy call is here, but he's making another pit stop. SpongeBob's in, he'll chuck on a new set of tires, so this means he should come out roughly P2 in this race, and he'll be sitting P2, but with all the penalties, all he's got to do is finish 8 seconds behind the Red Bull of Jesse, as he does just about come out in P2, and he will win this race. So SpongeBob, I said last time that he hasn't really been fighting in the top few positions as much as we thought. As much as I thought he would be, but then he showed up last race, and he's showing up again this race, and he's showing me wrong here. He's showing with the right races and the all this chaos throughout the field, he could very much be in contention for the championship with these sort of races. But the driver standings, he's currently sitting 4th, so to finish P2 or win this race, he could bounce himself right into contention for the championship. He's not sitting too far behind short markers. If he wins this race and XD doesn't get points, XD currently sitting 10th though, the safety car would be amazing for him. But if XD somehow manages not to get points, he will be just 5 points behind XD, but still a decent amount behind H Taylor. Depending on H Taylor goes to this race, I don't know why that extra pit stop has been made by him, but it has. It gives him a lap or so fresher tires than a few of these guys, but with that extra pit stop, it's going to hurt him here. But of course, penalties, top 4 all have penalties, so that puts KRC with the penalties in the net race lead at the moment. So what a wet race this has been at Spa to push these drivers around. Could he get his first win of the season, KRC, or could we see H Taylor get his first? maybe he's on SpongeBob. Jesse, it's really just been other drivers getting wins. We saw Short Marcus has gotten a win. XD got a win, and then I think the other driver got. I think H Taylor may have gotten a win himself. So yeah, Jesse has actually gotten a win himself. He won last time out, showing that he can contend for the championship. But Troye has gotten a few wins. So it's been Troye, XD, and all that winning the races. SpongeBob's still yet to win a race. H Taylor, even though he's in contention, still yet to win a race. So he's been up there, but not enough to be leading the championship. But he still hasn't won a race. Yeah, Joe is still catching the safety car, but they all should catch by the end of this lap. You can see that Jesse trying to get hit as much into those tires as possible. But look at this Honda podium. All Red Bull on this podium as you got the Red Bull leading, followed by the two AlphaTauris. The other Red Bull though sitting in P9 at the moment. But very chaotic Spa and a very wet one indeed. It would have been good to say wet to dry, as that really changes up the grid a lot. But just the wet race has been enough. They just not as much moves as I'm sure you would like as a viewer of the race. But KRC really sitting in a good position in this race, and I'm sure he's really happy with how he is looking. But another driver who's actually came out of nowhere is Town as well. He's in P4, but of course he's got penalties to worry about now, so that's the only problem. But this is another driver that's good for Short Marcus. He can try to bring himself back through, but this is good for a lot of drivers who had those instances early. XD, who's been struggling all race, it's good for him now because now he's back in the top 10 with that, so he can try to get himself back in the mix, trying to gain a few places. He'll be a driver to keep an eye on as he tries to push his way through the field. But there it is, race control telling us that the safety car will be in this lap. Jesse will back up the field, try to make their tires cold, warm up his, and focus all on a good exit. But if you don't want to step up on the power too much around here, otherwise you will end up losing it. But if he gives the safety car enough of a gap, he could just pull away now. Look at how much of a gap he is giving the safety car. He can pull away, but whenever he wants now, look just how far back he is holding the field, and he goes. Oh no, he does not. He's just trying to get some heat into those tires. But you can see just how much he's weaving. The safety car is in now, so he can go whenever he wishes, and he does. He's away. He's already away in this race for the restart again. Jesse is. This is a 5 second for Chris for contact with Paul Harrison, but Jesse needs to this is going to be crucial for 8 laps of racing. He needs to do the best he can and pull as much of a gap as possible, roughly a second a lap to the car behind him. So he's got a lot to do in this race, but I don't doubt his skill to be able to do so. But instantly SpongeBob pulling a gap to his teammate Cairo. Both those guys sitting within the top 10 in the championship, and then Town behind him and KRC. But you can see, look at H Taylor all over the back of KRC, trying to find his way back through and into the lead. When you look at penalties, he'll go to the outside or maybe even the inside here. So the inside will open up. H Taylor down the inside on safety car restart. He goes down the inside of KRC. KRC also around the outside though. They're still going to be side by side coming out through the next corner, and H Taylor does find himself ahead into the next position, but it looks like he might be able to come back at him here, but he won't quite be able to do so. And H Taylor finds himself up into P5 in this race, and with penalties still net lead in this race. But next up for him is Town. XD though, another driver made up a place off the side as well as Short Marcus, as it looks like Chris has had a bit of a mare and restart. Maybe he's got damage. When we look on it, if we get a quick look at his car here, I'm pretty sure he does have a bit of damage on board, unfortunately. But XD all over the back of all over the back of Antonis here. He's going to want to get past as soon as possible. He needs to limit the amount of points H. Taylor is getting on him. If H. Taylor wins this race, XD needs to still get 11 points on him. So he still needs to finish P5 with the fastest lap, or P4, so a long way to go in this race for XD if he wishes to hold on to that championship lead after this. It just shows you how much it can change up through one race. But you can see how far on the back of him he is here. He won't have a look to the inside here, but he'll see behind it. Actually, he will have a look to the inside, but it's cut off quite quickly. But he's going to be able to get a cut back here. He'll switch back on the power. Short Mark's looking to get himself amongst it, but he gets on the power too early and can't quite do it. He gets in the slipstream again. He's trying to the outside here, but under braking, he's going to hold around the outside. But Anton is still on the inside, pushes him right on wide, makes him use all the extra curve as possible, as is a McLaren around KRC out of this race. He DNFs, and there's another safety car. Another, just like that, another safety car out in this race, and that is terrible for Jesse, because now he can either pit, get rid of 5 seconds of his time, but come out in basically dead last, or he could stay out in the lead, deal with those 5 seconds, but most likely be overtaken by a lot of drivers that come through the field. But you know what? XD may still be able to do something here. He's sitting P7 at the moment, but when penalties come into play, he's probably sitting P2 when you look at it. We look at getting penalties, there hasn't really been any more penalties since the last time, but and you look at all the penalties ahead of him, he could still find himself right up there. Of course, Paul Harrison will get his penalty taken off, so he's another driver to look at. His penalty was with full contact, so we'll pretend that he doesn't have those 5 seconds, whereas Jesse's 5 seconds was for speeding in the pit lane, so he very much has those. Although he's been quick, he's also been struggling on track limits. Jesse has. But with another safety car, we're only going to have a handful of laps of racing, so it'll be interesting how we go. See if any drivers make some pit stops onto a different compound tire. It doesn't let the tracks gonna be clearing up, and the difference between fresh and worn inters isn't that big, so I wouldn't be surprised to see all these drivers stay out in this race. But if Jesse does pit, he will come out just behind the McLaren of CDM, second last. He debates it, you can see there, he goes to do it, but then he thinks better of it, stays out, and he will have to deal with 11 seconds of penalties. SpongeBob though is sitting P2 with only 3 seconds, but then you got H. Taylor and XD. SpongeBob can still win this race, he just needs a 3-second gap. I know that's quite a lot, especially when it's to a driver of the skill of H. Taylor, but all he's got to do is get onto the phone to his teammate and go, hold these guys up. If you hold these, because if he can go to his teammate and go, hold these guys up for me. I know it sounds stupid, but hold them up. If he can get him to hold them up, he can run away, get a 3-second gap, and he can win this race. But of course, that then puts Cairo at risk from those drivers. But if he has the skill to drive defensively and stay ahead, he could do this. So if I was SpongeBob, again, I'm getting on the phone to Cairo, or whoever can tell Cairo, hold these guys behind me up. That's the benefit of having a teammate behind you. Hold them up. I know it's going to hurt him with his penalties, but he's got more penalties than what SpongeBob does. So SpongeBob's got a better chance to winning this race than what Cairo does. So if I was them, I'd really just be telling them, if we can hold them up, we can win this race. If not, we're going to be dropping very, very far down the field with these penalties. And with the wet weather, it's not that hard to hold up a driver. You saw Checo's defensive drive at Abu Dhabi, how much he was able to hold up Lewis Hamilton with DRS, with dry running. But in wet weather, there's no DRS, so there's no benefit over the driver ahead except for ERS and slipstream, which they already have ERS, and slipstream isn't effective enough to really gain you that much time to the point where you can get a full car gap clear. Because as long as he can keep his nose in Cairo, he can defend a lot against these drivers. You can see 11 runners left, so pretty much everyone here will finish in the points. But XD, thanks to these two safety cars, he's came out of absolutely nowhere in this race. But the drivers to keep an eye on, you got H. Taylor, Paul Harrison, XD, and CDMJW, all drivers who have no penalties in this race. I know it shows Paul Harrison with the penalty, but that was for contact under a safety car, so that will be taken off after the race, as I'm sure it wasn't to any fault of his own. Unless he was to pit and take off the pen. I'm sure he won't get it. The safety car, imagine, wanting to be out for one more lap. As you can see just how bunched up the field are. This isn't what Jesse won. Oh, and Jesse has a little bit of a moment there, but manages to hold it ahead on the safety car. I think he's learned his lesson from weaving too much, but he holds the lead on the safety car for the time being. But bit of a scary moment there for Jesse, and he'll be looking not to do that again. So it'll only be 4 laps of racing with the safety cars in this lap. 4 laps. So 4 laps of straight racing from these guys will be insane. As you can see, SpongeBob has been given a 5-second penalty for ignoring yellow flag. So that's, I don't know what that's for exactly, but he's been given a 5-second time penalty for it, and I'm sure again another penalty that will be taken off after the race. He's got there's no reason for doing that. He hasn't even taken Jesse ahead, so nothing on that part. I think what happened was Jesse's lost it. He's and then the game sort of like glitched, said he's ahead or it's something like that, and it's given him a 5-second for ignoring yellow flags. But I'm sure again it will be taken off after the race. Not something to worry about. We're going to pretend like that will be going away. There's no other reason. There's no delta under when you're actually under the safety car. The deltas are only when you're catching the safety car or under VSC. So there is no delta to be ignoring. So it's a bit of an odd penalty. Not sure where they have picked that one up from, but I'm sure it will be going after the race, and we'll be keeping that in mind when watching these last few laps of racing. Jesse needs an 8-second gap to SpongeBob, so he's got to pull 2 seconds a lap to him, which is a massive margin to be pulling each lap. It is massive, but to pull that much is going to require a lot of skill between drivers. It's going to require a lot of skill from Jesse and a rough run from SpongeBob, but you can see there is confirmation. Safety car here. Jesse doing the same thing he did last time. Backing him right on up, and then we'll go we'll go just before the chicane. So that way he doesn't, no one ends up spinning or something at the chicane, anything like that. You can see Chris's car is under AI, so we won't have to worry about him being in this race. So basically everyone in here without any incidences should finish top 10. But you can see him weaving, holding tabs in those tires. You can see SpongeBob trying to stay alert for the restart. There we go, and we are back on the way in this race. It's SpongeBob from Jesse Francaro on the safety car, restart into the chicane. We're not going to worry too much about these guys, but I want to worry more about Hayes Taylor and the cars behind finding their way back up. And I want to see the likes of Cairo hold this field up and back these guys right on up, allowing SpongeBob to pull as much of a gap as possible. Doing a Perez play here to back these guys right up into each other. You can see just how slow he is going, so that might actually be the play that he is doing. You can see the gap is already 1.4. He only needs 3 seconds. So and then if he wants to be safe, he can get 8 seconds with that extra time. But if I was him, I wouldn't be trying to play it safe. I'll just be trying to get the minimum amount of gap that I do need to these guys. But you can see that he's not cracking under pressure. He's just driving. He's taking it nice and easy, trying to hold these guys up for his teammate. But he might not actually even be trying to do that. So it looks like it's all down to SpongeBob to pull that gap on his own. He doesn't need 3 seconds to his teammate though. Let me remind you that. He needs 3 seconds to H. Taylor. H. Taylor is not only, but he's not behind one car behind his teammate. He's not behind his teammate, but he's his teammate a car, then H. Taylor. So right now he's almost got that gap already to H. Taylor that he needs, but No sudden changes out the field. The only changes I can notice is Sean Marcus up to P9, but he's still got a penalty to his name. You can see Cairo not quite backing these guys up too much. If I was in this situation, I'd really be trying to back them up here, forcing them to back out of every corner, forcing them into mistakes, forcing them to go aggressive, forcing them to do stuff they don't want to do. But you can see Town there has a little look to the inside, but it isn't going to work for the time being. Short Marcus making a move on the Red Bull of Anton Aspire. He finds himself up into P8. Next person, championship rival XD, but XD doesn't have a penalty. So a lot of those guys in the middle few, none of them do. What?
Mate!
What?
He just where I was at the Grand Prix. Jesus Christ.
But SpongeBob still leading from Jesse, and he's actually holding quite a good gap to him. There's nothing to worry about there. But he then got Cairo further 1.8 seconds back to his teammate, nearly 2 seconds now. He needs to bring that gap up just a tiny bit more, and he has, and then SpongeBob has the gap that he needs to win this race. Only 2 laps of racing after this, 3 laps including this one, and he is holding up Town an absolute treat here. Town isn't the driver he's got to worry about though, it's more H. Taylor, but when you look at penalties again, Town will get him too. So if he wants to beat Town, he's got to pull a gap. He has to pull a gap himself to Town, but it doesn't look like he's going to be able to do that, as Cairo picks up another 3 seconds, and at this point he might as well play the team game and just force the cars behind to drop back, as Paul Harrison picks up a 3 second. No longer one of the only drivers without a penalty, as XD finds himself up as XD and Paul Harrison going at it side by side. And Paul Harrison drops XD back another position. XD is really trying to get past the driver down the inside. He'll shoot it down the inside of Paul Harrison, but it's not going to work there. On the outside line though, traction not going to happen. Paul Harrison shoots him out. Short Marcus now going for a move on XD. A crucial move. He sets the fast lap of the race. Short Marcus on the outside of XD. Doesn't want to go too deep to the point where he shoots it to the back of Paul Harrison, but on traction on the outside with ERS activated. No DRS because of the rain. And he's now ahead of XD in this race.
Amazing commentator.
Cheers, mate. But Short Marcus now ahead of XD in a crucial move for the championship to try and keep himself in it. But H. Taylor only sitting P4 still, so to make him another pit stop, probably a mistake on H. Taylor's behalf. But when you look at all these penalties throughout the field, you got 11 seconds for Jesse, 8 for SpongeBob, but 5 of those 5 seconds will be getting taken off because it was for ignoring a yellow flag, and I don't see what that was for really, because I was watching it throughout that, and I don't think there was anything that could have given him that. But and Jesse's around, and again after having a great race, Jesse, he's made a mistake. He's gonna have front wing damage. I imagine you don't see it on stream, but I'm sure he's got something. That is Jesse's race over, and that is SpongeBob into the lead, 3 seconds ahead of Town. So he's got the gap he needs, and only 1 lap to hold on. He'll need 5 seconds to win with the 5 seconds. He'll need 5 seconds to Town to win with the 5 seconds. But he wouldn't. If I was him, I wouldn't be too worried about that. I'd just be worried about holding the 3 second gap, which is all he really needs at this point in this race. I'm sure that 5 second will go no problem. But H. Taylor and Town still very close. H. Taylor quick drive looking to find himself back through. He needs to get up into P2 as they go into the last lap of the Grand Prix. Short Marcus find himself up another position ahead of Paul Harrison. Paul Harrison on the outside though gets better traction. XD loses a bit, but he holds it. Doesn't end up in the wall on the outside. Is Short Marcus on Paul Harrison. A crucial move for the championship again. More points on XD on under traction. He's gonna hold around the outside, but it's not quite gonna work. He'll tuck him behind Slipstream. Use all his ERS. Try to come back at him through Rouge. Coming up coming down the back, coming down the straight. He's gonna want to get as much as he can. Oh, there might have been a little bit of contact there, but he has the pace advantage over him, and he gets himself ahead for the time being. But Paul Harrison might come back at him here, but under braking, he goes defensive. He wants to hold on to this P5. Paul Harrison on the outside, Shawn Marcus on the inside. Shawn Marcus holding on to position for the time being, but H. Taylor still in the back of town. He wants to get past him. He wants to have a go at SpongeBob here. I don't think he understands that that 5 second would most likely be getting removed. I'm not sure exactly what it is for, but we're looking at him. I'm sure that that 5 second will be removed from the race. But H. Taylor is all over the back of town here, giving it absolutely everything in this final lap to finish ahead of the Mercedes driver. He's all over the back of town looking for, I think, his first podium of the season. So he's had a great race. He's only got 3 seconds of time penalties, so it's definitely possible in this race once you factor up everything. But H. Taylor's still all over the back of him. But the man of the hour, he's only got a few corners to go in his AlphaTauri, and he will take his first win of the season, and possibly, for all I know, his first ever win in OBF1. But as SpongeBob rounds the final corner, he will take his first ever win of the season, and he wins in the AlphaTauri. He does drop back, but in the end, H. Taylor takes P1, but without SpongeBob's 5 second, it will be the win for SpongeBob. Great driving from him to go up from what I believe was just barely in the top 10 places after qualifying to win the Belgium Grand Prix in his AlphaTauri car. As long as that penalty gets taken off, he will win. If not, it's still a P3 and a great result in this race, as there is the podium. H. Taylor winning a very important race on track, but without the 5 second from SpongeBob, it is only P2 for him, but P2 enough to put him ahead of XD, depending on where XD actually finished. So you really need to win if you want to be ahead of XD in the end. But with all of that, he should just about go ahead of XD, I believe. But there we are, the confirmation of the results with all the penalties. That is H. Taylor winning ahead of the Mercedes of town, who got his first podium of the season. But if it does get taken off, that yellow flag incident, it will be SpongeBob getting his first ever win ahead of town in P, ahead of H. Taylor, then town, then XD, who managed to do enough to get P4, which holds him in the lead. Whether there is a penalty, whether SpongeBob's penalty gets taken off or not, he will hold the lead, as he somehow got ahead of Shawn Marcus in the end. So not what Shawn Marcus would have won, and I'm sure he would have won the P4. That would have been with penalties, the reason why he dropped so far back. But it was an eventful Belgium Grand Prix, and what a Grand Prix it was indeed. Full wet race, started on inters, finished on inters, and very entertaining one indeed. And that's me done for round 6 of OBF1 for the Belgium Grand Prix at Spa. Next time out we'll come around for round 7 at Hungary for the Hungary Grand Prix. That should be a great race. Hopefully I'll manage to wake up in time to actually race tier 2 this time. But with that being done, thank you guys for coming around. What a race it was, and I'll catch you guys next time for the Hungary and the Hungary Grand Prix.